welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be looking at the future of work today.
Okay.
And specifically, we're going to be using a bunch of Harvard Business Review articles that you send over
Awesome.
to kind of guide our conversation.
Yeah.
We've got a lot to cover,
We do.
from work from anywhere to AI in the workplace, the on-demand workforce, diversity and inclusion, purpose-driven companies, and probably a lot more. You ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Well, I think a natural place to start is with this whole work from anywhere thing.
Sure.
WFA, as the cool kids call it.
Right.
I mean, it's been a hot topic for a while now, especially since the pandemic kind of forced a lot of companies to figure out how to make it work. The Chowdhury article we read really dives deep into it. But for me, that 4.4% productivity boost from the USPTO data was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
It's pretty significant.
That's huge. Like, are we really giving people more control over their work-life balance? Or are we just expecting them to be available all the time?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think the thing to remember is that WFA isn't just about location anymore.
Right.
It's about this like fundamental shift in control,
Mm.
When you work, where you work, and even how much you work.
Yeah. It's like, if people can be that much more productive when they have more control over their schedules, could we maybe see a move towards a world where work is measured by what you accomplish, not how many hours you spend sitting at a desk?
I think that's a real possibility, and I think
Yeah.
we're already seeing some companies experiment with that, with outcome-based work arrangements and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be huge, wouldn't it? It'd be like, goodbye 9 to 5, hello, flexibility and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wonder, I mean, I'm thinking about the challenges too.
Yeah.
Like Chowdhury also talks about the communication issues and knowledge sharing.
Right.
How do you brainstorm with colleagues when everyone's scattered across time zones?
And that's where it gets really interesting, right? Because I think what we're seeing is this shift towards what they call asynchronous communication.
Asynchronous communication.
Yeah.
Okay.
So think like Slack, shared documents, project management platforms like Asana. It's about trusting your team to engage when they can, documenting decisions, and making sure information's accessible.
So it's less about like instant replies and more about thoughtful contributions.
Exactly. And I think that requires a certain level of trust, right?
Yeah, trust is huge,
Yep.
especially when you start bringing AI into the mix. And speaking of AI, I was fascinated by that Baddick article, the one that talks about using an apprenticeship model for integrating AI into the workplace.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Like AI as assistant, then monitor, then coach, then eventually teammate. It's like a whole evolution.
It is. And what's interesting to me about that model is the emphasis on building trust with AI. It's not about blindly following algorithms, right? It's about understanding why AI makes certain suggestions, knowing when to override them, and even, teaching AI through our own actions.
Okay, so AI isn't going to like steal all our jobs tomorrow, but it's definitely going to change how we work. I mean, I still feel a little apprehensive about it, to be honest.
Sure. How do we ensure that human judgment doesn't get completely sidelined in this process?
Well, I think that's where the feedback loop comes in, right? As AI learns, it becomes better at explaining its decisions and recommendations, so there's more transparency there, which ultimately builds trust.
That makes sense. So it's not just about us trusting AI, it's about AI earning our trust too.
Exactly.
Okay, so AI is here to stay. It's changing the future of work, but maybe not as scary as some people think. But then it gets me thinking, what about the skills we need to thrive in this future? I mean, that Raman and Vaduganathan piece about the on-demand workforce and these talent platforms, it just seems like such a chaotic landscape out there.
It is. It's like a jungle out there.
Yeah.
Companies are increasingly relying on these platforms to find talent, but they're just scrambling to fill these skill gaps without really thinking strategically about it.
So they're just like throwing darts in the dark, hoping something sticks.
Pretty much, yeah. And I think that lack of strategy connects to what Dowell and Jackson were talking about with that whole woke washing thing.
Companies talking about diversity and inclusion, but are they actually making real changes?
Yeah, it's one thing to say the right things, but it's another to actually walk the walk.
Exactly. And I think real change requires a commitment to structural evolution, like assessing accountability, rewiring policies, empowering employees to drive cultural change.
I mean, that sounds great in theory, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, they give some great examples of what they call job purposing.
Job purpose.
Yeah, where people intentionally tailor their roles to align with their passions or make a positive impact.
Okay.
Like they talked about this supervisor who makes a point of calling on quiet voices in meetings to make sure everyone feels heard. It's those small but consistent actions that can really shift the dynamic.
I love that. It's like taking ownership and making your work more meaningful.
Hmm.
And it's not just about diversity for diversity's sake, right? It's about creating a sense of belonging.
Exactly. And the Sleepian article really hit home for me on that point.
Yeah.
Feeling included isn't enough. It's about feeling like you can truly be yourself at work.
Hmm.
Knowing that your unique perspective is valued. Like, it's about belonging.
You know, it makes me wonder, are companies missing out on valuable perspectives by not fostering that stronger sense of belonging? Especially now, when creativity and problem solving are so important.
I think they are, and that brings us to purpose, right? I mean, Serafim's piece on ESG suggests that purpose-driven companies are finding new avenues for competitive advantage.
You know, sometimes when I hear ESG, I just think of companies checking boxes.
Right.
But you're saying it's more than that.
It is. It's about identifying what they call material ESG issues for your industry.
Material ESG issues.
So these are the ESG factors that actually have a direct impact on a company's long-term value creation.
Hmm.
You know, the things that investors and stakeholders are really scrutinizing.
Yeah.
Companies need to align their efforts with those to create a truly differentiated strategy.
So it's about finding the issues that matter most and really leaning in.
Exactly. It can't just be a PR move. It needs to be deeply embedded in the company culture.
Like walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. Like that example with the Mahindra Group staying true to their commitment to rural India even during a crisis. That's putting your purpose into action.
I'm curious, what specifically did they do during that crisis?
Well, they focused their resources and efforts on supporting their employees and communities in rural India. Even though it meant sacrificing short-term profits.
Oh.
It was a powerful demonstration of their commitment, and it ultimately strengthened their brand and reputation.
That's really impressive. I mean, it seems like we're seeing this convergence of trends, right? This shift in control with WFA,
Yeah.
the integration of AI, the growing importance of diversity and inclusion, and this rise of purpose-driven companies.
Absolutely.
It's like all of these things are reshaping the relationship between employers and employees.
I think so.
And it really feels like we're on the edge of a major shift in how we think about work altogether.
It certainly feels that way, yeah. Yeah, it really does. And it makes me think about, where do individuals fit into all of this?
Yeah.
I mean, Cooper and Galati, they talk about moving beyond like random acts of humanitarianism toward this more like sustained, purpose-driven approach for companies.
Right.
But what about for us? How do we take ownership of our own future of work?
Yeah, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I mean, with all this change happening so fast, it can be really overwhelming to know where to even start.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the key skills or maybe even just mindset shifts that we need to navigate this new world?
Well, I think adaptability is huge.
Okay.
Like the world of work is changing so quickly,
Yeah.
Being able to learn new things, be flexible, embrace uncertainty, it's crucial.
So it's like having that growth mindset, right? Being open to new experiences and challenges and viewing setbacks as opportunities to learn.
Exactly. And it's not just about technical skills either. Interpersonal skills are more important than ever, especially like communication, collaboration, empathy. In a world where work is increasingly distributed and virtual, these skills are what help us build and maintain relationships.
It's funny, we've talked about trust in companies, trust with AI.
Right.
But building trust with our colleagues is also super important in this new world of work.
It is, and that requires like clear communication, active listening, understanding different perspectives, especially when you're working across cultures and time zones.
It makes me think about emotional intelligence, too. Being able to manage our own emotions and empathize with others, it seems so crucial in this new landscape.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, emotional intelligence is key for building relationships, resolving conflicts, leading effectively. And the good news is it's a skill you can actually develop with practice.
So we've got adaptability, interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence, any other key skills or mindsets that come to mind?
Well, creativity and innovation are becoming even more valuable.
Right.
Like as AI takes over more of those routine tasks,
Yeah.
those uniquely human skills,
Right.
problem solving, critical thinking, thinking outside the box, those become even more important.
And I feel like that's where that sense of purpose that we talked about earlier can be a real driving force.
Mm.
When you're passionate about your work and connected to a bigger mission, I think you're naturally more creative, more resilient, even when you're facing challenges.
Yeah, purpose acts as like this internal compass, guiding us through the ups and downs of our careers. I think it starts with understanding our own values and passions
Right.
and finding ways to align our work with those.
That's a great point. And it brings us back to that question you asked earlier about how we take ownership of our future of work. Like, how do we even begin to shape it when it feels like so much is out of our control?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to being proactive and intentional.
Right.
Like thinking about what kind of impact do you want to make?
Hmm.
What are your non-negotiables when it comes to work environment, company culture?
Hmm.
Those are really important questions to be asking yourself.
It's not just about finding the right company. It's about continually developing our skills, embracing lifelong learning, right?
Absolutely. We can't just rely on like those traditional training programs anymore. You need to be curious, seek out new knowledge, be open to learning from all sorts of sources, online courses, mentorship, even just reading articles and books.
Yeah, it's so much about personal initiative and taking responsibility for our own growth. What do you think is the role of companies in supporting their employees through all these changes?
I think companies that really thrive in this new world of work will be the ones that foster a culture of continuous learning and development.
Mhm.
They need to provide opportunities for employees to experiment with new technologies, take on challenging projects, expand their skill set.
It's creating a culture where learning is valued,
Right.
risk-taking is encouraged, and even failures are seen as learning opportunities.
Exactly. Imagine a workplace where employees are empowered to shape their own career paths, and they're actually supported in pursuing their passions,
Mhm.
even if that means shifting roles within the company.
Yeah, it's a big shift from that traditional, like, top-down approach to career development, right?
It is. It's much more dynamic, much more individualized, and it requires a different kind of leadership, too.
Mhm.
Leaders need to be mentors, coaches, guiding and supporting their teams rather than just directing them.
This takes me back to our conversation about purpose.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll see a shift towards companies that are more purpose-driven, like attracting talent that wants to contribute to something bigger than just the bottom line?
I think so. I mean, purpose is becoming a huge factor in attracting and retaining top talent. People want to work for organizations that are making a positive impact on the world.
Right, not just generating profits.
Exactly. And it's interesting how that intersects with the whole rise of ESG investing and stakeholder capitalism. Like,
Yeah.
are companies feeling the pressure to walk the walk, not just talk the talk?
I think they are, and it's not just from employees. It's from consumers, investors, even governments. There's this growing awareness that businesses have a responsibility to society and the environment, not just to their shareholders.
And remember that whole woke washing thing we talked about?
Yeah,
Consumers and employees are getting really good at spotting inauthenticity.
totally. So it's not enough for companies to just, put out statements about their values.
Yeah.
They need to back it up with action.
Exactly. They need to embed purpose into their operations, their decision-making, their culture.
This has been a really insightful conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, we've explored the changing landscape of work from both the company and the individual perspective.
We have.
Where do you think this all leads?
Well, I think we're at a really pivotal moment.
Okay.
The future of work is being shaped right now, and it's really up to all of us individuals, companies, society as a whole
Yeah.
to decide what that future looks like.
It's kind of daunting,
It is.
but also really exciting.
It is.
I mean, we have this incredible opportunity to create a world of work that's more equitable, sustainable, and fulfilling for everyone.
We do.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on.
There is.
I mean, technology is changing so fast.
yeah.
Social values are shifting.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It is, and the pace of change is only accelerating, right? Like, it's clear the old ways of working just aren't sustainable anymore.
Right.
We need to rethink, like, all our assumptions about work, about careers, about the role of companies in society.
Okay, so we've talked about the skills individuals need,
Yeah.
the mindsets, the role companies play in creating that supportive environment.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's this bigger question.
Okay.
What does a truly equitable and fulfilling future of work actually look like?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think there's just one answer,
Right.
a one-size-fits-all solution. It's going to look different for different people, different industries, different cultures.
Okay, but if we had to try and paint a picture, what are some of the things we might see in this future?
Well, I think flexibility is going to be key.
Okay.
And not just in terms of like location and hours, but also in terms of career paths.
Okay.
Like people will move more fluidly between roles, companies, even industries.
Yeah, that makes sense with the whole lifelong learning thing we talked about. People
Yeah.
are constantly upskilling, reskilling.
Right. Just to stay relevant.
Yeah.
And technology, I think, is going to play a huge role in facilitating all of this.
Mhm.
Like, imagine personalized learning platforms that recommend courses and programs tailored to your specific skills and career
Oh,
aspirations.
that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll see the rise of what they call micro-credentials.
Yeah, the smaller, more focused certifications
Yeah,
allow people to quickly gain in-demand skills.
exactly.
And then, of course, there's purpose.
Yeah.
That's going to be central. People are going to want to work for organizations that align with their values,
Right.
that are making a positive impact on the world. We might even see more of a blurring of lines between work and activism
Oh, interesting.
as people try to integrate their passions into their professional lives.
Yeah, that ties back to that idea of job purposing we talked about earlier.
It does.
Like intentionally shaping your role
Exact.
to align with your interests and values.
And companies are going to have to embrace this,
Yeah.
Create cultures where employees feel empowered to contribute their unique talents, to pursue their passions, even if it means like moving laterally or taking on gigs outside the traditional org structure.
Yeah, more entrepreneurship employees driving innovation within their companies.
Absolutely.
And I guess that traditional career ladder,
Yeah.
it might start to look more like a career lattice,
A
right?
career lattice.
Yeah, allowing people to move in different directions, explore different areas, develop a more diverse skill set.
Exactly. It's a much more dynamic and fluid work environment.
It is.
Yeah.
But that also requires a huge shift in mindset for both individuals and organizations.
It does.
Mm.
Individuals need to be more proactive, embrace lifelong learning, build their networks.
And companies need to move away from those hierarchical structures,
Right.
embrace more flexible and collaborative ways of working.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of the potential benefits of this future of work.
Yeah.
More flexibility, more purpose, more opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
But are there any potential downsides that we should be thinking about?
Well, one concern is that it could lead to increased inequality.
Okay,
If access to opportunities isn't equitable,
yeah.
we could see this widening gap between those who have the skills and resources to thrive and those who get left behind.
That's a good point. We need to make sure everyone has access to education, training, support to navigate these changes.
Absolutely.
What else?
Another potential challenge is the erosion of traditional worker protections.
Okay.
As work becomes more fragmented, more gig-based,
Yeah.
it becomes harder to ensure fair wages, benefits, workplace safety.
It does. So we need new policies and regulations to address those challenges of the gig economy and make sure everyone's treated fairly.
Exactly. It's a complex issue, no easy answers. But I think the first step is just acknowledging the potential downsides
Yeah.
and having these open and honest conversations about how to address them.
I think that's a really important point. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the practical stuff, like work from anywhere,
Yeah.
to these bigger questions about the nature of work itself.
And like we said, we don't have all the answers, but these conversations are so important to help us shape a future of work that's beneficial and sustainable for everyone.
So as we wrap up, what's one key takeaway you leave our listeners with today?
The future of work is not something that's happening to us. It's something we're creating together. It's up to each of us to be proactive, intentional, and to be part of the conversation.
That's a great point. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the future of work. We hope you found it thought-provoking and inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep shaping the future of work.